"Sir, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing." That's what the officer said, while he was standing on my front lawn, with my neighbors filming, and my 9-year-old son crying in the window, and I'm just standing there in handcuffs thinking, how do you get arrested for trespassing on your own property? You know what I mean. Across the street, the HOA president Patricia Hamilton is watching with that little smile. Like this is exactly how she planned it. And in that moment, I went from being a normal suburban dad trying to give his kid a backyard to the guy in the neighborhood who got hauled off like a criminal. And yeah, that actually happened. Let me back up. My name is Michael Daniels. I'm a veterinarian. I'm not a troublemaker. I don't start problems with people. I'm the guy you call when your dog ate something weird at 2 a.m. My wife Sarah and I bought this house in Maplewood Estates. Quiet little subdivision outside Denver. The kind of place with matching mailboxes and people who judge you if your grass is an inch too long. There's this strip of grass behind our fence just a few feet wide, kind of like a no man's land. When we bought the house, the lawyer went over the deed and the survey and said, "Yeah, that's yours. That line right there from the maple tree to the fence post, that's all included." So to me, it wasn't a mystery. It was just part of the yard. My son, Ethan, he's 9. He's obsessed with soccer. And on this one Saturday morning, he's out there kicking his ball on that little strip. And he goes, "Dad, can I put my goal right here?" And I told him, "Sure, but let's make it official." I went to the hardware store, grabbed a clean white sign that said, "Private property" in big black letters. Nothing dramatic, nothing like, "Keep out" or "else." Just, "This is ours. Please respect it," I spent the afternoon digging the post hole, mixing concrete. Getting the sign straight, he's handing me tools and acting like my assistant. And I remember thinking, this is what I worked for. This is that normal life. You know, like Saturday in the yard with your kid. Grill later, quiet. Nobody bothering anybody. Except somebody was watching. I look up and see this woman across the street taking pictures of my new sign like it's a crime scene. Sarah kind of leans over and says under her breath, "That's Patricia Hamilton. She's the HOA president." And the way she said it, it wasn't like, "That's Patricia, she brings cookies." It was like, "Be careful, she bites." Patricia didn't wave. She didn't introduce herself. She just documented us and walked away. And that should have been my first warning. Next morning, 7 a.m., I get an email titled, "Notice of Violation. Unapproved exterior signage." I hadn't even had coffee yet. It says my sign violates community aesthetics, and if I don't remove it, they'll refer to outside authorities. I actually laughed like outside authorities over a sign that's on my land. What are you gonna do, call the FBI because my 9-year-old has a soccer goal? But at 10 a.m., there's a knock on my door, and now it's Patricia in person. Blazer folder clipboard energy. She smiles like a politician and says, "Mr. Daniels, we need to discuss your recent addition to the neighborhood landscape. Like my backyard is some zoning violation in downtown Manhattan." She doesn't ask to come in, she just walks into my living room and spreads documents all over my coffee table. "That strip behind your fence," she says, tapping papers with her nail like she's billing me by the minute, "has been maintained by the Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association since 1989. We have records proving it's managed community space, regardless of what your personal deed may say." I said, "My survey says that land is mine." She gives this little patient laugh like I'm a child and says, "Real estate attorneys miss nuances all the time. We cannot allow unauthorized signage. It sets a dangerous precedent." And then she drops the line. "Take the sign down and we're done. Keep it up and we escalate. Law enforcement already supports our position." That's when Ethan walks into the room in his grass-stained soccer socks, and Patricia looks right at him and says, all sweetness, all fake warmth, "Such a sweet boy. It would be unfortunate if community tension made it hard for kids to feel safe playing outside." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten me directly, but the message was loud and clear. Do what I say, or I will make your life hell in front of your family. When she left, the house felt different. Smaller. Tighter. I told Sarah, "This is insane, she's acting like we stole something." And Sarah, who is usually a fighter, like she once argued with Comcast for 3 hours over a $12 charge, she just looked tired and goes, "Mike, maybe just take the sign down. We don't need problems with the HOA." And that actually hurt worse than Patricia, because it sounded like my wife was already scared of this woman. Then it started going fast. I get a call at work. Some guy claiming he's legal counsel for the HOA, telling me I have 24 hours to remove unauthorized signage from HOA-maintained grounds, or they'll move forward with criminal trespassing charges. I said, "You can't trespass on your own property." And he just said, "That's for the court to decide," and hung up. That night, a police cruiser parks in my driveway, lights off, but real visible, like theater. Officer Knox hands me a notice, says, "We're logging a complaint. Not an arrest, just contact." My neighbors are all staring through the blinds like it's Netflix. My kid's at the window whispering, "Dad, are we in trouble?" And I'm trying to smile at him like nobody. It's fine. While in my head, I'm going, what is happening to my life right now? Then the story hits local news. New homeowner refuses to comply with HOA standards, faces possible charges. They put Patricia on camera, and she talks like she's sad for me, like, "We've tried to work with Mr. Daniels, but he won't respect long-standing agreements. No one wants this to become criminal." So now I'm officially the crazy new neighbor on TV. Clients at my vet clinic are whispering. Sarah's pale and shaking. She says, "Mike, I'm begging you, just take the sign down." And I'm like, if I give up land that actually belongs to us, where does it stop? The next day I get the call. "Mr. Daniels, the HOA has filed criminal trespassing charges with the county. You're required to appear in court." That afternoon, the same officer comes back, only this time he's carrying handcuffs. And this is where everything just broke. He says, "Sir, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing." And I say, "This is my backyard." And he says, "Sir, I don't decide that." He cuffs me in front of my house. My son is crying in the window, begging, "Please don't take my dad." Patricia is across the street with her coffee, watching like this is exactly what she wanted. And I'm thinking I'm a grown man with a career and a mortgage, and I am being walked to a squad car like I just robbed a gas station for putting up a private property sign. I sat in a holding cell for 6 hours replaying that moment. When I got home, I was not the same person. I was angry in a way I didn't even know I could get angry. And then it got worse. Sarah was in the shower, and her phone lit up on the counter. I didn't touch it. I swear I just saw the preview. It said, "PH, make sure he doesn't lawyer up before the arrest. Everything depends on him staying isolated." PH. Patricia Hamilton. I felt like the air left my body. When Sarah came out, I just asked calmly, "How long have you been talking to her?" She sat down at the edge of the bed, and she couldn't even look at me. "Since before we moved in," she said. She reached out. She said, if we cooperated, Ethan could get into the good soccer program, and we'd fit in, and we wouldn't have problems with the neighbors. I just stared at her. She was shaking, crying, apologizing, saying, "I never thought it would go this far." and I'm just standing there realizing the HOA president was basically running an intel operation on me through my own wife. That was my break point. That was the exact second I stopped reacting and started hunting. The next morning, I drove to the county building and I started pulling records. Public records don't lie. You ready for this? Our house wasn't even built until 1993. Patricia told me that the HOA had been maintaining that strip behind my fence since '09, which means either she has a time machine or she's lying. I also found out that Maplewood Estates HOA, this big, powerful organization she kept waving in my face, didn't even legally exist until 3 years ago, right after she bought her house. And that so-called community-maintained strip, it wasn't community anything. It was private. The previous owners of my house had an older neighbor named Robert Miller, who would water their plants and mow the edge when they were traveling. I tracked Robert down. Sweet old guy, 72, still wears those old work shirts with his name stitched on. He goes, "That land was always theirs. I just kept it neat because they were good people." That woman twisted my words. Then, and this is where my stomach actually dropped, a neighbor handed me copies of preliminary development paperwork Patricia had already filed with the county. She had literally labeled part of my deeded property as community green space available for future improvement, basically setting it up to be grabbed and flipped. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was trying to steal land and resell it. I called Patricia that night, and I made my voice real calm, real tired. I said, "Patricia, this has gotten out of hand. I want to resolve this. I'm thinking about selling the house anyway. Can we meet tomorrow and just settle it so I can have clean title?" She goes soft immediately, like a shark that smells blood. "Of course, Michael. That's very wise." We meet at the community center the next morning. She shows up smiling heels, perfect hair, leather folder. She slides a single-page agreement across the table and says, "If you sign this transfer, the association will assume ownership of the disputed strip and will consider the matter closed, no more legal exposure for you." I look down and realize she's literally asking me to sign my land over to her HOA for $1. $1. I nod and say, "This is very thorough. I just need to understand a couple things so my attorney's comfortable." She relaxes because she thinks I've surrendered. And then I ask real innocent, "So, help me out. You said the HOA's been maintaining that land since 1918, but my house wasn't even built until now. How does that work?" She stops smiling. I keep going. "Also, you said the HOA has decades of stewardship, but the HOA didn't legally exist until 3 years ago, right after you moved in. So which version should I tell my lawyer?" Her face goes pale. I set my phone on the table so she can see the red recording light. I say, "And while we're being transparent, why did you file development plans with the county using my backyard as proposed community property for commercial use, before I even moved in?" She lost it. The mask dropped. She snapped, "You have no idea who you're dealing with, and people who don't cooperate face consequences in this community." And I'm just sitting there, letting her talk straight into an audio recording that I am already planning to send to the district attorney, which I did. That afternoon, I handed them everything: the fake timeline, the incorporation records, the development proposal, the text messages, the recording of her basically admitting she's weaponizing authority for profit. The investigator listened for maybe 5 minutes and said, "Mr. Daniels, this is fraud." That evening, unmarked cars were parked outside Patricia Hamilton's house. Detectives walking in boxes, coming out laptops bagged. Neighbors standing there in their driveways like, "Wait, are we the drama?" And Patricia, "Miss, I'll call the cops on you." Patricia was walked out in handcuffs and put in the back of a car. You want to talk about a mood shift? We had a community meeting that night at the same center where she tried to make me sign my land away. Every neighbor showed up. People who wouldn't even look at me last week were suddenly sitting in the front row. I played them her own words. I showed them the documents, the timelines that made no sense, the community maintenance lie, the fact that she was literally trying to carve up other people's lots and flip them. You could feel it in the room, this cold anger, like everybody realized at the same moment. Wait, we weren't being protected. We were being groomed. Sarah stood up in front of everyone, voice shaking, and said, "Patricia used me to pressure my own husband and I let her. I thought I was protecting our family and I almost helped her destroy it." Nobody clapped. Nobody booed. They just sat there, letting it sink in how close this all came to being normal. By the end of that meeting, the HOA voted Patricia out, permanently put Mint Peterson, the retired paralegal, in charge as interim, and passed a motion to cooperate with the DA. The trespassing charge against me got dropped the next morning. The same news station that called me defiant ran a correction like, "Local HOA president arrested in property fraud scheme, homeowner cleared." And yeah, seeing that felt good. A couple of weeks later, I was back in my yard with Ethan putting the private property sign back in the exact same spot. Same whiteboard, same black letters, same ground, but it didn't feel the same. It felt heavier now. Sarah brought me coffee and set it down next to me and said, "For the man who reminded us what it means to not roll over." Ethan looked at me and said, "Dad, are bad people going to try to take our house again?" And I told him the truth, which is, they might try, but now we know how to fight. So let me ask you something, and be honest in the comments. Is this just an HOA doing its job, or is this abuse of power? And if something like this happened on your street, would your neighbors have your back? Or would they film you, getting cuffed, and say, "Not my problem"? Tell me what you think. Tell me what side you're on. Because this wasn't just about a sign, this was about who actually owns your life.